Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. This is episode number 7 of the Catholic Bible Daily Reflections podcast. My name is Caroline. I'm so glad you're here joining me today. This is a daily reflection on Genesis chapters 13 and 14 in the Catholic Bible. We left off in Genesis with chapter 12 and the call of Abraham from God. And we see in chapter 13 that Abraham and Lot will separate. So right off the bat, we had in chapter 12 where God calls Abraham and makes him a promise that all nations will be blessed through him, and his descendants will be as numerous as the stars and as numerous as the sands of the earth. And then in chapter 13, we see that they are growing. Lot and Abraham, all of their possessions, all their people are growing, such so that, they were abundant. God has blessed Abraham exceedingly. And of course, Lot is blessed through Abraham. And then things become uncomfortable. And if you have ever waited for God for something, a promise, a blessing, abundance, you will go through a period of time where God will make you uncomfortable. And that is to get you to move because God wants to move. And we see that here in chapter 13, that they have become uncomfortable because they're so numerous and they're now in conflict with each other. No space, right, for land. They had livestock. And so Lot chooses to separate from Abraham, and Abraham lets him go, but he tells him, let's not quarrel with each other. You choose the left land and I'll take the right. You take the right and I will choose the left land. And Lot chooses to go towards the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Here, those wicked cities are coming up now. And he and his family and everything that he owned, they moved towards the Jordan River, closer to Sodom and Gomorrah. So not only do we see the uncomfortableness of this situation, now Lot has moved. And now God, after Lot leaves, renews his promise to Abraham. He tells him, do you see all this land? I will give this to you and to your descendants. You will have descendants as numerous as the stars, as numerous as the sands of the earth. So he renews that promise once Lot leaves, and he's looking at all this land that even Lot is on. So that's going towards. So you see how that just kind of leads us to this setup by God to make things uncomfortable. That Lot leaves, and then Abraham has the promise renewed with God, and Lot leaves towards the lands of Sodom and Gomorrah, wicked cities. And it's another instance of man just walking towards evil and wickedness, and living there leads to compromise. How often do we just turn a blind eye to the wickedness that's going on around us, right? We accept things that we really hate because they're evil. They're not good things. And we say, it's not that bad. It's fine. I'll just turn a blind eye to it. That is Lot and his family. Somewhat in foolishness, they're heading towards the cities. These are evil cities. And they go, and then there happens to be a war that's going on in that land. All the kings, multiple kings of Canaan are fighting. This is one of the first recorded wars in Genesis, in mankind. So we have this multi-king war, and Sodom and Gomorrah, of course, involved. And Lot and his family are captured. They are captured, and they are being held hostage there. They are caught up in the middle of this conflict and this war, the first war ever recorded. And so Abraham becomes aware of it because one of Lot's men escapes. And so Abraham, being the righteous man that he is, he goes to fight. to free Lot, his nephew, whom he considers a son at this point. He doesn't have his own son yet, his own, with Sarah. And he takes all his men that he can, and he goes and he fights and he frees Lot and his family. Now, Lot, in his, I would still say, foolishness and compromise, continues on towards Sodom and Gomorrah. So we see kind of this foolishness, this appeasement, compromise, and then Abraham is very righteous and lets him go because he can't stop him from going. He can only recommend. And then there becomes known in this chapter Melchizedek. He is not only a king of Salem, but he is a high priest of God. It is the very first mention of a priest, it's not a prophet, it's a priest. He is a priest. He's not a prophet, although he may be also a prophet, but he is a priest of God, a high priest of God. And he breaks bread with him. And this is the first, I would say, communion, because as Catholics, if you pay attention in the Mass, you will see that the priests are all in the line of Melchizedek. It is referenced right before communion. And Jesus Christ is also mentioned in the New Testament as being a priest in the line of Melchizedek. And he, Jesus Christ, of course, breaks bread. And we now know this is our Holy Communion. It goes right back to Genesis. And so we see that Melchizedek, seeing the righteousness of Abraham, breaks bread with him and blesses him. And Abraham, for his part, gives him a tenth of what he owns. And this is the beginning of tithing. If you're familiar in the church traditions, Christians especially, but in Catholics as well, the concept, the tradition of tithing is to give 1/10 of what you earn to the church for the benefit of the church and for the benefit of others. And so we see here that came from Abraham and Melchizedek right here in Genesis. And so Melchizedek blesses him. You won't see Melchizedek mentioned again until the New Testament, when when the apostles are speaking of Jesus. And they say that he was a priest in the line of Melchizedek. And we see it every week when we Catholics go to Mass. And just before Holy Communion, they say that Jesus Christ, in his sacrifices, he was a priest in the line of Melchizedek. So right here in this chapter, so God moves, God renews his covenant with Abraham. Lot, we leave off with him being a compromiser, a bit of a foolish man, and appeasing and going towards Sodom and Gomorrah, this evil path away from the righteousness of Abraham, right? And Abraham stays righteous. He is faithful to God, and he gets blessed by Melchizedek. At the end of chapter 14, we see him tithing and giving, sacrificing 1/10 of what he owns to Melchizedek as a, this kind of peace between the two and this blessing. So I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode today. A lot of good things to unpack here. But if you compare this to today's time, we see God's moving that is so, comparable to, if you're going through a season with God, and he will make you uncomfortable before you receive your blessing and abundance. And God makes his covenant here, renews his covenant with Abraham. So all important things here: blessing, tithing, covenant, and promises. And we'll continue on with chapter 15 in Genesis in our next episode. Please leave me comments, feedback, like and subscribe. I would love to see you here in our next episode. Have a great rest of your day.